Hi, I'm Ken King, high-performance basketball coach, teacher, and the owner and founder of the Boost Institute for Learning, Literacy, and Growth. Welcome to Real Learning with Real People. These are conversations with real people. They're unscripted and they're designed to pull tidbits of information from people who are grinding right now to get the most out of their lives. Using a minimum amount of editing and a maximum amount of authenticity, we want to provide lessons that anybody will find effective, relatable, and entertaining. We seek to have guests that provide learning based on their life experience. Some are chosen because of their experience as high performers in sport, business, or education, and others because I felt they have meaningful lessons to teach and I wanted to make sure they have a platform to share it with the world. The language in the videos can sometimes be mature, as I'm always encouraging my guests to be themselves. It's all part of making sure we do our best to give content that's authentic and effective, and you feel like you can utilize this real learning and connect with these real people. As a huge baseball fan, I'm really excited today to introduce our guest, Justin Sua of the Tampa Bay Rays. Justin is their mental performance coach, and he has a master's degree in sports psychology from the University of Utah. He's also worked with the NFL, PGA, other MLB teams, and the WWE. Justin's written 2 books, one entitled Parent Pep Talks and the other entitled Mentally Tough Teams, and you should check both out. Justin's married and lives with his wife and 3 kids in Tampa, Florida. Now, teachers and students, coaches and athletes, parents and children, business owners and employees alike, I highly recommend you listen to this talk beginning to end multiple times because there's a ton of stuff in here from Justin, and I know it's going to help you and the people that you surround yourself with get better. Let's talk to Justin. Hey, hi Justin, how's it going?
Doing well, Ken. How about yourself?
I'm really good, really good. Weather is slightly below average here in Calgary, Canada today.
Oh, nice. And the weather is pretty much up to par here in beautiful Florida.
So what is that? What does that look like? Sunny, but
So
how warm is
sunny.
it?
Yep, we're about 91 degrees right now, and so yeah, so it's pretty nice.
It just finished snowing a little here. Just a little dust. Cool,
Too
cool.
funny.
So you're in Florida right now and
Correct.
enjoying the sun. And what I want to do just to kind of kick it off here is go back from well before where you're at right now and hear a little bit about you and how you grew up and what your background is in terms of your family and
Yeah.
your friends and that kind of
Cool. Yeah. Well, born and raised. It's funny. I'm wearing this shirt right now. Born and raised in Los Angeles, actually.
thing. Nice.
Born and raised there. My father is an immigrant to this country. He was born and raised on the island of American Samoa, which is a small island near Australia, the Polynesian Islands. Him and his family moved here. They loved 2 things. They all love. They love to fight and they love music. And so that's a very interesting wanting to fight musician is a interesting combo.
Yeah.
My mom born and raised in Los Angeles, and it's funny because they actually both met Polynesian dancing. So they're both. I don't know if any of the audience has ever heard of like a luau, Tahitian dancers, hula dancers. That's actually what my parents did for a living when they first met.
Cool.
But after that, my dad was a professional baseball player. He played baseball for the Dodgers and the Milwaukee Brewers here, Major League Baseball in the United States. And then once he retired, he went into running his own, being an entrepreneur to run his own trucking company. And I remember we lived in a little apartment in a little city in a rougher part of town, and then through him and my mom's hard work, bigger house, and they were kind of co-owners of a multi-million-dollar entrepreneur just a company. And it was neat because my mom didn't even graduate high school, and my dad came here late in his life. So I was raised in a family where they taught me, hey, go for your dreams. If you
Yeah.
want something, go for it. And it was neat to hear that around the kitchen table. And so I played baseball, wanted to follow my dad's footsteps at BYU as a pitcher.
Cool.
I'm the oldest of 3. I have a younger sister who's 3 years younger than me, and a younger brother who's 7 years younger. And it was good life growing up. Played sports and did your average regular high school kid stuff, and got into a lot of trouble and had a lot of fun. Played baseball at BYU. Got a bachelor's degree in broadcast journalism. So I wanted to be a sports broadcaster, actually,
Cool.
and if not a pro baseball player.
Yeah.
So baseball didn't work out. Went into sports broadcasting. the first person I ever interviewed or I ever put a microphone in front of was Kobe Bryant, who we obviously
Really?
know that. Yeah, first one went back to Los Angeles, Kobe Bryant, and that was the moment when I realized I am in the wrong job. I didn't want to do it. I hated it. I couldn't stand it. I didn't want to report on athletes. I wanted to help athletes, but I had no idea how I was going to do that. And so then what ended up happening, I ended up going into in this transitionatory period of my life, went into teaching high school. Now at the time, I'm kind of skipping over a lot of things. I
Yeah.
got married, have 3 kids at the time, still do, and was a high school teacher in history for 5 years. And what I was doing is I was trying to teach these historical concepts to kids who don't want to be in my class. So now as a teacher, I'm using the research on educational pedagogy and how do you teach in a way that conveys the message where they learn, but it's entertaining at the same time to make them keep coming back. And I'll never forget early in my teaching career, I would having a lot of discipline problems. So I'd go to my supervisor or the principal and say, hey, do you have any books or techniques on discipline in the classroom? How do I have a better classroom where they listen to me? And he looks me in the eyes and he goes, be a better teacher. And I remember saying, oh, he goes, if you're a better teacher, they're going to pay attention to you in your class. And so I started studying storytelling. I started to study how to ask more effective questions. I started studying experiential learning. I started studying just how to connect better, building relationships. And lo and behold, it started to work. I started treating the students less as here, listen to me, and more like I'm the hero, and more had a different perspective, like they're the hero in their journey. How can I make this entertaining for them? Ended up going and getting a master's in performance psychology, sports psychology. I stopped teaching, and then I went and opened up my own kind of business as a mental performance coach, and then just kind of took those lessons I learned in sports broadcasting, those lessons I learned in sports as a baseball player, those lessons I learned at the dinner table from my parents and as a high school teacher. And now I apply it to what I do as a mental performance coach with elite athletes, having the chance to work with Major League Baseball players, NFL athletes, WWE wrestlers, insurance agents. And so it's been an absolute blast and quite the journey.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, that's wow. There's a lot there. That's a good, really good way to kick it off. And I'll come back to some of the stuff that you talked about professionally in a minute. But um, I'm interested to see. So going all the way back to the beginning of your story with mom and dad, if you had to describe, we'll start with mom. If you had to describe mom in a word, what would that be?
uh, Love. This woman is filled with so much love. And for her she wants to help everybody and
Yeah.
constantly on the phone. How can we help you? Going out and serving people, to neighbors, making dinners for them, or going out and showing up to our activities, whether talking on the phone with our teachers. This woman just loves people, and as a result, it made her a very powerful leader because people do anything for her because she'll do anything for other people. And so, right immediately, love is the first thing that popped into my mind.
That's awesome. And what about dad?
Dad, I would say, oh man, there's so many words that pop in my mind for my pops. I would say teacher. My
Okay.
dad is a master teacher, and whether it be as a baseball coach, as a leader with his employees, just us at the dinner table, he would teach us. There's a guy named, or was a coach named John Wooden
Okay.
for the UCLA basketball team, very famous. A lot of people know about him, and he's known for not just teaching the X's and O's of basketball, but teaching his team how to put their socks on correctly. That
Yeah.
is literally what my dad would do, teaching us how to water our toothbrush for maximum water optimization, teaching us how to wash dishes. And he just loves to teach, and he is always wanting to teach people. And I think he does it organic. He just loves to help and loves to help people be better. So he's willing to teach. And as kind of a corollary principle to that, he loves to learn as well. So my father, the teacher, my mom, the who loves. And
Yeah.
so great combo.
Very cool. That's awesome. And when you start to talk about your journey and how you connected some dots as a teacher later on, where relationships became the foundation, it sounds like of what you learned was going to make the difference in your ability as a teacher, or one of the things that were going to
Yeah,
make the difference in your ability as a teacher. Does it make sense? Do you connect those dots going all the way back to mom and dad? Like, does your strength, because you're very personable, like maybe it's the broadcasting thing too, but like it's easy to talk to you. Do you think that all that kind of stuff goes back to mom and dad, or was there some learning along the way as well that maybe you picked some of that up?
100%. One of the questions I always get is, where did you read from books? Is it your degree in performance psychology, or had you studied positive psychology and caring for other people? The reality, it started from the crib, and having two people who I got to see every single day. One thing that the neuroscience on behavioral development says is, like, little kids, they don't create habits, they mirror habits, or they
Right.
adopt what they see. And that's what I saw. I grew up seeing loving parents who care about people. I grew up seeing people coming into our home and staying with us for months at a time because they didn't have a job, they didn't have a home, and my parents just opening their home and opening their lives and their heart to people. And so that is where school started for me. And I think seeing them care so much about people, and then going in and having a front row seat to their board meetings, and seeing them interact with people, and people interact with them, and people looking at me and telling me about my parents behind their back, and as hearing their stories of how they've helped people. And I think that's where it all stemmed from. A combination of, there's that nature part, but I'm sorry, the nurture part, but also
Yeah,
it is, I do believe there are things, chromosomes woven in the double helixes, just kind of certain how people are wired. And I
totally.
do believe there is a nature part to all of our personalities, obviously. And I think there's a combination of how I'm wired with how I was raised, which really created a framework and the basis of how I've lived my life, and how I interact with people, and the habits that I've created and the goals I've set for myself.
Cool, cool. And I think we didn't get a chance yet to, or before we hopped onto the call, to talk about even what I do or what my company does all that much. You were just awesome enough to come on and chat a little bit. Um, so I just wanted to, I guess I'll fill you in a little bit on, I guess, me and why what you do is interesting to me, because so the company is based around learning. The Boost Institute for Learning Literacy and Growth is the company that I operate, that runs these video interviews, and we're really looking for people that are just interesting as learners, and it's modeled after Dr. Michael Gervais' podcast. So I don't know if you've heard of him or heard his podcast, but he's
I'm friends with Mike. Yep.
okay. So that's awesome that you're friends, and I like that. I met him years ago in California through some of Trevor Reagan stuff with Train Ugly. He
Yeah,
did.
it's funny. I talked to Trevor in about 2 hours.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So Trevor and I did some basketball camps and stuff like that together.
Small
And
world.
yeah, as I got connected to his stuff through volleyball when he was. I'm a basketball guy, but I've been a basketball coach at the university level here in Canada for almost 10 years now, and I'm just diving into a master's in performance psych, because that's
Nice.
kind of become my thing. But yeah, so I met Trevor probably 4 or 5 years ago. We did some stuff together, and we get along great, at least in my opinion. Maybe you'll talk to him later and he'll say something.
I'm
Um,
sure you do.
and he had a really cool panel probably not long after that, and Dr. Gervais was part of that panel, and we were in Anaheim, and the then coach of the Anaheim Angels was also on the panel along with a couple other people, and that was really cool. So I've been deep into Dr. Gervais stuff, going deeper and deeper all the time with performance psychology stuff, branching out from the basketball world. I don't know how my Toronto Blue Jays roots are feeling about the connection right now, because I feel like I see the Tampa Rays a lot, and regardless of where they are in the standings, it's always a frustrating outcome for the Blue Jays in my opinion.
Blue
But
Jays are
yeah,
great. Love that. Love that. I have some good friends in the organization. Great city. They're going to be good. They're going to be very good in
yeah,
the years to come.
yeah. Well, the young guys are awesome. Like the
Yes.
talent coming up is super exciting for them. Um, so just as you talk And as I'm connecting back kind of my story, and again, like it's funny that I didn't even think of Trevor or anybody like that being a connection, but the small world aspect. Um, I would say the same, almost the exact same two words for my parents. And I wonder about that because there's those words are not. I'm starting to see a trend in the people I talk to on this, where love on the one parent side and teacher or something like that on the other parent side, and it's not gender exclusive, is generally everybody's aspect of this. And one of the differences for me between what I'm trying to do to talk to people on here and a podcast like what Dr. Gervais does is I don't just want to talk to, or I don't just want to appeal to people who are looking for the highest performance. I'm also wanting to appeal to the average person who just wants to understand a little bit more about how they can get better, and about what one of the things that we teach at our company a lot is that performance is relative and high performance is relative. So like performing as a parent, performing as a sibling, performing as a student. There's aspects of performance in all of them. And so my next question for you would be, you talk about relationships and you talk about teaching and you talk about the love that you got growing up. Now, when you're working with some of the top performers, what do you see as maybe being some common characteristics on both ends of the spectrum in these top performers? And what I mean by that is, just to clarify a bit, is you'll definitely see some positive qualities in the top performers that aid their performance. But what I want people to hear from some of the people that work with the best is that there's also some maybe not positive qualities that top performers also have that cause them to stumble a little bit along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what's interesting that, and you discussed the spectrum of this, the positives and the negatives. What I'm seeing a lot of times is a lot of these where we see them as almost these negative attributes are not so much negative, but they are the shadow side of their strength. What I mean by that is a lot of these elite performers have this relentless pursuit of excellence. They want to be the absolute best, which is on the outset a very positive attribute. Okay, want to be on the best. However, on the same side, a shadow side of that relentless to be the best could bring some stubbornness. You can be perceiving it. Oh wow, they're so hard-headed. They're so stubborn, but that's the shadow side of them being so all in on what they know works for them. And so you can take the very same attribute and kind of split it, and it has a yin and a yang to it. A lot of these guys, they want to spend a whole bunch of time working on their craft. Well, the shadow side of that is when you're working on your craft, you're not definitely not at home with your family because you want to be so good at what you do. There's this growth mindset, that the learning approach that they have to themselves. Like they want to constantly grow and evolve, but the shadow side of that is possibly they might tinker a little bit too much, getting away from the things that work for them, and they have to kind of put a little governor on how much they do go out of what they're comfortable with, because sometimes they don't know how, if they learn something, is it going to throw off what they're already used to and comfortable with? And so there's a number of different things where we can see. Another thing is these elite athletes are so good at tightening up their circle because they have so many people clamoring for their attention, from social media to people, fans and fanatics. They keep a very tight hold on who they let in. However, the shadow side could be they might have their dukes up and be extra protective over people who can help them and want help to help them, but they don't let them in simply because they have this history of people trying to come in and doing them wrong. So like, no, they just don't want to let anybody in. And so you have this yin and yang. Oh, are you still there for me?
Yeah.
Sorry. You have these people who are these elite athletes who are constantly just working at the outer edges of their ability, and they're just not just navigating their performance, but every aspect of their life as well. They're just kind of on the tip of the spear in everything, managing their time, managing their relationships. So it is a lot of stress, and it is a lot of focusing on what they can control. Some are a lot better at it than others, but yeah, it comes with a whole conglomeration of issues and emotions and behaviors that you talk about a perception. Some may look at it as a bad thing. Others may look at it and say that's a great thing. And so it's all up to the individual.
Cool. And I think, again, kind of, I'm going to steal a Dr. Gervais term here and say pulling on that thread. um, One of the things that I really want to kind of communicate is that there's a lot of stuff that comes with social media. And I say stuff because there's a million words that you can use to describe it, but it truly is, I think, like it's like the definition of what the word stuff was meant to be used for. There's a lot of stuff that comes with social media. There's good things, there's bad things. I think one of the potential negative impacts right now is that young kids who want to learn and get better, they see that the best are always loving it. So the like LeBron, always on Instagram, loves the gym, loves working out. He gets boosted all the time for the work he puts in addition to his natural ability. And putting in the work is definitely a quality that helps you be the best. I don't think that anybody watching this or any of us are going to deny that ever. But if I'm a 12-year-old in 2020 and I look at social media, I can easily think that everybody who's at the top wants it every day. They always have their mind locked in. They always want to be in the weight room. I just did one of these yesterday with the strength coach for the Denver Nuggets. And he's like, yeah, we got guys that love it. We got guys that the conditions have to be perfect and they'll do it and won't complain. And then we got guys that we got to drag in there day in, day out. And it's a struggle. So on the mental side, because that's the part that I think it's still like the small percentage of training for most, at least young athletes, if they're training it at all.
Right.
On the mental side, do you see that same thing where it's like I'm going to assume that not every athlete you work with is super excited to see you every day in terms of the professional stuff you're doing?
What you are 100% correct. Yes, and especially in a job that is not easy to quantify, that is hard to be able to say, hey, is he more mentally tough? Whatever that means. Does he have more confidence? Is he able to focus more when we don't have a lot of the metrics or the technology or the data to quantify effectiveness? But yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I think just like anybody, not even take what I do for a living out of the question. When you or me walk into a room, you're going to have certain people who you're really close with, certain people who just kind of they get along with you, and some people no, they're just not a fan. And our job as mental performance coaches is to have the least amount of people hate you, hopefully, and not to say that's obviously I'm speaking tongue in cheek, but you want to at least be able to have a good relationship, to have a quality, at least conversation with people. And I think that's where a lot of people mistake. They think that professionals like myself or Michael or Trevor or even yourself, once you get going and go come in and you're walking by and taking everyone's mental performance temperature. How's your motivation? What's your why like?
Right.
No, like at the highest level, and even at the lower levels, it's not, you don't need some kind of guru coming in and okay, let's talk mental performance. How was that? What's the latest movie you saw? How's your family doing? What's going on? And there have been some guys where it's been years, like years before we have any conversation about mental skills training. And you want to build relationships so strong they can bear the weight of truth. And some relationships move faster than others where you can, and some don't. And you have to be okay with it. You have to have more, you have to be able to be a good person to connect with someone, as opposed to this brilliant guru hero. We can have it. It's easy to have a hero complex in this job where you come in with be the answer guy, and so no, especially a guy at the elite level, they don't need the answer guy. They just want someone who they can connect with. Can I talk with this person? And then we'll take it from there.
Cool. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, where when we talk about everybody being a teacher, whether it's you as and teacher and coach, to me, I use them sometimes more interchangeably than they should be used, but I do think that they can often be used interchangeably. So
yep.
When we talk about teachers and coaches and even parents and probably anybody in a leadership position, at the corporate level or something like that, where they have people that they need to kind of bring along with them with a common goal or a common vision kind of thing, you said build a relationship so strong that they can bear the weight of truth. And I think that, especially as a university basketball coach, I've had moments where I thought the relationship was there, and so I loaded up with some truth, dump truck full of truth on that person, and the relationship clearly wasn't quite what I thought it was. And then
Exactly.
then it's kind of putting some pieces back together. So, and maybe I'm looking for something that doesn't exist. But is there a piece to relationship building, that it's like once you get to this point, now that's kind of a sign that maybe you've gotten there, like maybe it's them sharing something, or is it more of a gut feeling? Is it case by case?
Yeah, so it is case by case, more of a gut feeling. Some of the indicators in my experience is a lot of times when my relationship is close with players, we're not even talking about baseball. We're not even talking about the sport. We're talking about family. We're talking about our kids. We're talking about things. We're spending a lot of time together organically, and it has nothing to do with sport or performance. And these conversations end up evolving and developing,
Right.
interactions. How often are they coming up to me versus me going up to them? Are they shooting me information? Hey, Justin, check out this video. This is a cool video. Oh, that's awesome. Or am I the one who's always initiating contact? And I think another time as well, especially in my profession, it gets to a point where we have a determine the relationship conversation. Well, I'll look them in the eyes and say, hey, how honest do you want me to be with you? Or how well can, do you want honest feedback? How do you want me to best benefit you? Do you want me to give it to you straight? Do you want me to give you my opinion? Do you want me to just ask you questions where I'm really explicit with the way I work with these guys? And because I've learned, just like you, where there have been moments where I thought our relationship was at a certain level, and I learned very quickly that it was definitely not after giving a little bit of feedback. And I learned, it took a while, like you, to pick up the pieces, and so that it didn't spill over into even to other relationships that I had with people, because this guy goes and, hey, careful talking to Justin because he might give you the truth. But yeah, we learned early in my career about a decade ago. And so but yeah, it's very it's kind of like this dance, but you'll know combination with some of the other things I just suggested.
Right, right. Very cool. So, um, when we talk about kind of the struggle, I guess, the and again, I guess coming back to the perception of a young kid, like if I look at approaching performance with a childlike mind, what I wonder is how, when I say what I wonder is, it's rhetorical. Like I wonder this all the time. Like this is the great
Yeah.
question that I think about all the time, is how do they perceive getting really good at anything?
Yeah.
And that's why Trevor's stuff is super cool. That's why I like to send people his way, especially at that youth level, as much as possible, because the skill acquisition side and the mental side that he approaches it with is super digestible, and it's super important, for those kids that are wondering how to be really really good. When we talk about the mental side of performance, is there one or two aspects that you think, here's a difference, like if you learn this before you're 18, or before you reach college, or before you reach semi-pro, whatever, if you've got this and this hammered down, you are way ahead of the kids that don't.
Implicit theories from Carol Dweck, growth and fixed mindset. Like
Yep.
hands down, not even close, in my opinion,
Yep.
because of how, number one, universal it is, and then number two, how it's for everybody. Another thing that you brought in, you not alluded to, you explicitly said about how kids will look at these elite athletes and think, oh, they love the grind. And that's why I love Muhammad Ali's quotes. I hated every minute of training. I don't know if you remember that. I hated
Oh
every
yeah.
minute of training, but I said something like do it and do it and live every day the rest of your life as a champion, or something like that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm butchering it, but that's so true. And I love what that athletic with that strength and conditioning coach from the Nuggets said. He's absolutely right. A lot of these guys hate it. They're like, I don't feel like doing it. But here's the thing, they do it.
Yeah.
The average amateur athlete, they only do it if they feel like doing it. These guys are pros. They're like, I don't want to do it, but I'm a pro, so I'm going to go do it. And just understanding that is huge, which is one of the principles of the growth mindsets that I'm sure your audience is very familiar with.
Yeah.
In addition to that, a lot of times what I think, yes, the kids are very important, the youth rather, are very important to teach. But I think where we often miss the mark in talking to are the parents. Because a lot of times these coaches will have these kids come to them for 2 to 3 hours a day, but they're fighting this uphill battle. They're creating this environment of the growth mindset, learning from failure, embracing adversity, receiving critical feedback. And then these kids go home and then they're having an environment at home that is not the growth mindset, that's completely fixed mindsets. And so I think this teaching for the parents is so vital as well, and having sessions where parents, teachers, and kids are together and are learning these psychoeducational concepts. Once again, like growth mindset. And for your audience who may not be familiar with it, for me, the way I interpret it is basically 5 key concepts. You learn from failure, you embrace obstacles, always give your best effort, seek feedback, and learn from the success of others. And if you can learn that and understand why that's important, and then corollary principles of the fixed mindset of those things, so you can catch your fixed and growth mindset thoughts, you are going to be light years above people. Just being aware of the growth and fixed mindset, how we're all susceptible to both of them.
Cool. And yeah, again, there's immediately there's about 5 different things I want to talk about in branching off of that. But when you talk about growth and fixed mindset, and with massive amounts of respect to Carol Dweck, and I'm actually talking to one of the people who work at Mindset Works later this week, one of their educators, and I know she works with them. That's kind of her thing now. And when we talk about growth mindset, it's probably one of the more bastardized terms in the last couple of years, in the sense that it's huge. It's like we've broken down with our companies we call them fundamental learning skills, and growth mindset is right there in that first column of controllable skills that you can start to build. But a lot of people take growth mindset and they put it on the wall, and now we're a growth mindset, right? Like I read Carol's book, and then I put some quotes on the wall about growth mindset. So now we have a growth mindset in this classroom. Now we have a growth mindset in our business. Now our family has talked about growth mindset, but we don't ever talk about how you respond to me when I give you feedback as a parent or something like that. What we're trying to do with our company is we're trying to quantify change in mindset. We've created an equation that puts it into some kind of data format, and we use that with groups that we work with to measure positive and negative change in mindset and culture, in our opinion. But is there a way for you, and you touched on kind of the 5 key parts, is there a way for you to kind of give people tips on how to actually instill it in a space, as opposed to just painting it on a wall in a space?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it would either be for mindset. I think it could be the same holds true for grit. I think the same holds true for positivity. I think the same holds true for effort and work. All these like just do it. Your shirt says work. Like, it's easy to put these things on shirts and on things, but how do you operationalize it and make it tactical and tangible and affect behavior? And again, as we know, environments is the invisible hand that shapes behavior. So what it comes down to is, what are the behaviors that you have created as a leader to operationalize growth mindset? So you say your growth mindset, how are you operationalizing it? And I think off the top of my head, it's having. So I'll give you some examples of what I've seen. When I was with the military, I saw a platoon sergeant teach his soldiers. They committed themselves to the growth mindset. He taught his soldiers a session on weaponry, how to clean your weapon. Very simple, basic. When he was done teaching, he pulled out his notebook in front of them and he said, "All right, guys, give me feedback on what did you like from my teaching? How could I get better?" And they're crushing him with good feedback, negative feedback, and he's sitting there writing it down. That is the growth mindset in action. The growth mindset in action is a coach at the end of a workout practice, a workout session, going around the team and telling, "Hey, who's someone who you noticed today did really well today? Oh, I noticed Jimmy, he was working really hard when he could have given up. That is growth mindset in action. It's going at the end of it's an executive team coming together and everyone going around the table and sharing their micro failures or their oops that they had, as Sarah Blakely says, before they start the meetings, failures that they've all had, to normalize failure, to learn from it, and to create psychological safety. That is great. That is growth mindset in action. So for a leader and the parents, it's, and then quantifying it like you guys are doing. It's creating, whether it be an algorithm or whether metric, whether it may be, to be able to measure its effectiveness. But obviously, as you know, it takes so much, so many iterations. There really, so many different variables and nuances to it. But yeah, that's, I don't think there's one cookie cut away, but it takes the leader to look and say, okay, how do we make this part of our culture? Instead of putting it on shirts, putting it on the wall, how do we actually do it?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And now there's, you start to see some of these connections happening where it's, I can ask you for feedback as a leader, but if our relationship hasn't built strong enough that it can bear the weight of your truth back at me,
Exactly.
then you're gonna say, well, Ken, that was the best practice I've ever been a part of. And I'm just gonna
Exactly.
get that day after day after day after day.
Exactly.
And it's kind of, it's almost like a false growth mindset. Like I'm asking the question, I'm asking for feedback, but if the trust isn't there and that relationship's not built, then
Yeah,
that's where we
that's
get
a
in trouble.
great point. That's what I noticed too. That's what helped me see that psychological safety with that soldier, that army,
Yeah,
because they were giving him tons of critical feedback. He's like,
yeah,
okay, that's a good point. You're right. That's a good point. And you're right. It goes back to those relationships. Another thing just popped in my mind too, and it does have to do with the biology, but I would say John Medina's work on brain rules.
yeah, yeah,
So understanding sport, understanding the neuroscience of, so basic fundamentals, the importance of sleep, eating healthy, and moving, and relationships. If young athletes could, in people, anyone remember those things, optimizing all of those, that you're going to be light years ahead.
yeah, yeah, totally. And I think we talk about, and this is a much, probably time for its own whole interview, but when we talk about things like meditation, mindfulness, and trying to incorporate those into day-to-day practice, um, I'm pretty confident based on what the things I've heard, the research I've done, and then knowing me and my daily routine, nobody's ever feeling like they're doing enough of it. Like if you actually understand it, you probably never are like, and that's enough, I'm good.
Right, right.
Right.
I agree.
So we talked with the Denver Nuggets strength coach, and we were talking about microdosing on the physical side, and trying to get as much little bursts of training in here and there in the weight room, and how it still creates meaningful change, even though it's not like a 2 hour long workout.
Mhm.
We kind of branched into, but I didn't want to too much because I knew I was going to be speaking with you soon. So I'd like to talk about, and I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of microdosing. Um,
I could. It sounds like I could just deduce what it means just
yeah, it's
from
not
hearing that. Yeah,
rocket science on the surface. There's a lot of layers to it, but
yeah.
it is really just trying to get those little spurts of training in anything. And for me, the concept of microdosing, especially in the world of varsity sport, like post-secondary sport and high level sport, on the mental side makes a lot of sense because at the pro level, there's time for it, in my opinion. Like from my perspective, I don't know, maybe there's not as much time as you think there should be, or as much time as you want, but there's time that's a little bit easier, and there's resources for it. Whereas with, like, let's take the program I work with university women's basketball. If we're doing mental training, like maybe there's not a resource for it. Like maybe I'm that resource, or maybe there's not time for it because they have class and they have this and that and the other thing, they got to work and what have you. So if you could microdose one thing into the performance side, especially for those athletes that are just trying to squeeze in the most they can in their day, what would that be?
Uh, Short answer is meditation. Or it depends, but I'll give you some examples, and I'll give you an example of how we use microdosing, to use that vernacular in this. So in 2013, I was working with soldiers, and my role was, my job, 2012, and my job was to have an hour long mental skill session with them once a week. but the platoon sergeant wouldn't give it to me. Like, he didn't trust me. He's like, why would I give you time with them? They don't know you. And so one day I went into his office, and it was my job. I had to, but I wasn't given the time. So I went into his office. I said, hey, can I teach a mental minute to your unit instead? And he goes, what's a mental minute? I said, it's mental skills training in 1 minute. I literally just made that up on the spot. And he goes, mental skills training 1 minute. What does that mean? I was like, literally 1 minute, I'll teach the concept on mental performance. So he's like, I said, when is everyone what's a meeting you have where everyone's already together? I can come in and do that. He goes, tomorrow at 5:30 during PT, physical training. So I show up 5:30 in the morning, everyone's standing at attention, and a platoon sergeant stands up. He goes, all right, this is Justin. He's going to give us a mental minute about how to be mentally tough. He pulls out his watch. He goes, you got 60 seconds, go. And I knew he was going to do that. So I timed it perfectly. And I taught a session on motivation. 3 ways on how to be motivation based on the science is essentially a self-determination theory, which you're probably familiar with. And boom, made it pop, put a quick story in there all in 60 seconds. It was over, and that's when mental minutes were born. And he says, I want one of these twice a week. We're going to come into your room. It was mind-blowing to him. Went to the IMG Academy, did the same. Went to the Red Sox, did the same. The NFL team, same. Now with the Rays, and this is what we do, to be quite honest. So now there's no time in the pro setting either, especially with baseball. So we do mental minutes, microdosing, so to speak, where it might be a mental minute of meditation, a mental minute of positive self-talk, a mental minute of gratitude, where I come in a meeting that they're already in, they're already going to have, because no one has time. But it goes back to Bruce Lee's term, long-term consistency trumps short-term intensity. And so we just keep it consistent, short doses over time. If players want more, they come up and we have additional conversations. But yeah, I think some of the meditation is great. Journaling is great. Even breath work, just working on breathing, which isn't necessarily meditation. Yeah. Those can be some great microdosing activities or exercises.
Yeah, totally. And I'll share a conversation I had with you, or with a friend, about you, without him knowing necessarily who you were. I was like, hey, I'm having this guest on my YouTube channel, and we're both big. We grew up together. We're both big baseball fans, and he's like, oh, the Rays, and I was like, yeah. Unfortunately,
understandable.
But he's like, well, I would think that baseball is really easy to be mentally tough in, because you have more time to gather yourself, essentially, was his statement. And I said to him, I was like, well, one, having a decent level of knowledge about it, like, you can't say anything's easy to be mentally tough in. Like, that phrase is a misnomer, I think, in and of itself.
Right.
But two, if you have more time, you also have more time for self-doubt, and you have more time for like questioning actions and any kind of anxiety, and the list goes on and on and on. Like the time coin flips both ways. And so do you see that, and I guess for anybody who doesn't follow baseball, who might be watching this, when we're talking about time, we're talking about the difference between, I guess, the change in pace in baseball compared to a sport like hockey or basketball, where it's kind of back and forth. Baseball has scheduled breaks, scheduled stoppages in play, and those can sometimes, though the league, I think, is doing actually a pretty good job of cutting down on it, those can sometimes be pretty long.
Yes.
And if you're talking about like an outfielder, like I played right field for a long time because I was supposed to be the guy that didn't have to do much.
Yeah.
That was we had very few lefties in our league at that time, so it was like, you're going to play right field and first base because you're 6'6".
Right.
But so every time I was an outfielder, I was out there, and it's like, man, you don't realize how mentally tough playing the outfield is if you've never stood out there for 9 innings before. Like, that's a serious battle. And so when we talk about the negative side to mental performance, and do you see in baseball especially, I would think, that's just anecdotal, but do you see maybe an increase in the ability to get distracted or lose focus? And if so, what do you suggest we do to help with the inability to focus in times where we should be focused?
Right. You bring up a really good point in terms of all the downtime. Because, yeah, a guy may perform, have an at bats, and then he's not hitting again or performing again. He might do terrible until 30 to 45 minutes later. And he had all that time to think and he can beat up on himself. And now he's up there and he might get one pitch and mess up again. Then he doesn't perform until another 45 minutes or 25, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you have a time to think golf as well. A lot of
Right.
those think golf, there's a lot of time within golf as well. And like you said, sports like basketball, football, hockey, it's so fluid, so much action, and also the physicality in it.
Yeah.
Baseball, the more angry and mad you get, the more tension you have in your muscles, the worse you're going to be off. Football sometimes, or hockey, sometimes that you can let it out on a check or on a tackle or whatever it may be,
Yeah.
but not the case. It's more a combination of the fine motor skills and the gross motor skills. And so, and not so fine. But basically, I think one of the things that you have to work on as a baseball player is being okay, strengthen your relationship with negative thoughts, how you label them, being able to notice them. And this goes back into the meditative practices, being able to, and, and, and really being able to notice them and look at them without them destroying you, and being able to realistically say, instead of saying, I can't have negative thoughts, I can't have anxiety, if they're at a 10, being able to just turn it down to a 9, turn it down to an 8, turn it down to a 7, as opposed to thinking you're going to eliminate it altogether. And so that's why these baseball players and golfers, or anyone who has a job where these constant nagging thoughts are there, they need to learn how to sit with them and be completely okay with it, and gently bring their attention to their breathing or their feet or their sight or sound, some kind of kinesthetic cue to bring them back to their anchor. And so that's why it is difficult to be in baseball, because you get all the self-sabotage and the negativity bias we already have,
Yeah.
combined with baseball being a game of failure. And yeah, being able to sit and be okay with your thoughts, even if they're chirping at you really loud.
Yeah. And actually, I love that term game of failure, because in baseball, like nobody hits 500,
No,
right? Like,
no.
so it's like you're
Yeah.
literally going out trying to be the best below average that you can be, like that. and
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
it's
Exactly.
accepted. It's like
Yeah.
that's baseball, right?
Yeah.
And then we have this, especially like in basketball and hockey, that kind of thing. There's so many athletes that's like, oh, I took 5 shots, I only made 2,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Or and it's like, have you, like, baseball players play 162 games, they miss a lot more than they connect.
If you're 2 for 5 in baseball, that's a great day. You're like, yeah, it's got 2 hits. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, and this, I'm spitballing now because this is kind of just popping in my head as you talk, but does that mean that failure is completely 100% relative?
I think there are different types of failure.
Okay.
I think 100% relative. I think some people may argue for that and say,
Yeah.
yes, it is hard. We can get philosophical and say
Yeah.
yes and say no. I think there is a certain threshold, because in baseball, when you're dealing with salaries and jobs, and a guy who is failing at batting 100 versus a guy who is failing and batting 250 or almost like 245, the 100, yeah, that's, you're out. Like we're
Yeah.
going to bring somebody else in, and but it is, and so yeah, I think they're, especially at the highest level. But then some people judge their failure not on results. Their failure is all internal. Hey, did I give my best today? You know what? I may not have gotten those hits, but I was focused. I worked my process. I did the best with what I had that day, and so it was actually a success in my book. But the results, I was still over 3. We'd have players, we live it, and so now I'm kind of leaning more towards it is relative. We have players who go 0 for 3 with no hits, walk into the clubhouse taking off their uniform knowing that they had a great day because they hit 3 balls on the screws, meaning
Right.
they barreled up and hit the ball at 100 plus exit velo on the hammered balls, but right at guys, 3 outs over 3, but that's a great day. And then
Right.
you have 3 guys who got little jam shots or for singles maybe. Yeah, they got 3 hits, but they might not feel so confident because they were quote unquote lucky hits. And so yeah, and they don't feel very good going in. They don't feel very confident. But yeah, so I guess I can see both sides of it.
Yeah. Well, and I, now that when you talk about the guys that go 0 for 3, and one of my favorite players of all time was John McDonald. And the guy wasn't the greatest hitter, but he played the game with a passion. He was exciting. I'll never forget. Like I was in tears. It still makes me kind of emotional now to remember the game that he played after his dad passed away. And
Yes.
he randomly comes out and hits. I think he hit 2 home runs.
2 home runs.
Yeah, and it was like I was watching. Like it was just surreal. And I think he probably had 5 home runs that season. Like,
Yep, exactly.
and players like that where they approach maybe somebody else's perception of failure without their own perception of failure. To use what you said before, I'm kind of wondering, like, is that they've built a relationship with the game that they can bear the truth of the outcome of their performance?
That right there is one of the first questions I ask people. Tell me your relationship with failure and tell me your relationship with success.
Yeah.
How do you define it? What is it for you? And it's neat because they don't know how to answer that at first, and they'll wonder it, and then I'll obviously continue to ask questions. And what is failure? What does it mean? And how do you look at it? And a lot of these guys is just kind of through experience. A lot, if you make it to the major leagues, you've been through the ringer. You've been through ups. You've been through downs. You make it to NFL. You make it to NBA. These guys have been through a lot. And a lot of times I like to ask them, hey, what's been some of the biggest learning lessons that you've had in your entire life? Almost all of them. I don't know the percentage. I don't want to throw a random percentage out there, but are from them overcoming these failures, whether it be on the court or on the field or off the field. And it's interesting. I'll say they never want to relive it again. It was a terrible moment in their life. It was a horrible failure, but that's when they learn the most from it. And then it's okay. Wait, what does that teach us? Oh, yeah, we can learn from failure. And so, yeah, I think these people who are able, you from the outside look and see that they can quote unquote cope with failure better than the others. I think they're the ones who have been able to learn, whether through the hard knocks of life or someone taught them or they taught themselves organically, how to pull the lessons from failure, how to use failure as an opportunity to learn or to get better, to be able to pull out how can I do better from this, as opposed to guys who are just crushed by it. They let it define them. And a lot of these guys who struggle with failure, they are defined by what they do. Guys who are okay with failure, they have families, they have other endeavors, they have other things. Baseball doesn't, or football or basketball doesn't. They are more than an athlete, as that phrase is out there. There's more to them, and so they're able to say that, hey, I had a bad outing, but that doesn't mean I'm a bad father, I'm a bad husband, I'm a bad boyfriend, whatever it may be. I have other things going on in my life, and so they have more of a robust portfolio for their identity, as opposed to those guys who live and die on how they do on the court, the field, or the course.
Cool. One of the last things I want to touch on here is I would imagine as you kind of went through the pathway that you described to get to where you are, you talked about having some discipline problems in the classroom, um, and building relationships as a way of managing that. Is there another time? Like I'm kind of curious about what your struggles might have been, or one of your struggles, and maybe like just a story about where you haven't been the best learner, or you were struggling to quote unquote get something, or kind of turn the corner on understanding something, and how you got there.
Oh, tons. Oh, tons. Being in a home raised with being in a home with someone with a severe mental illness, you learn a lot of lessons from that. Having a wife who currently has a chronic illness and at one point couldn't walk for 2 years, and going and traveling and having clinical depression with 3 kids, and trying to navigate your life and struggling that these there's a time we had when I was young, getting this business going or getting my career going, 3 kids in diapers with like $30 in our checking and savings, and I'm crying and sobbing at the ATM just because I'm struggling trying to get I was on academic probation in grad school early, because all of my undergrad hadn't I didn't take a math class, I didn't take a science class. So I came in, I was learning statistics and research analysis, and I had no idea what they were talking about. I didn't even know how to take notes because I had no background in this. And so absolutely struggled in every facet of my career, and going from place to place trying to start my career with no one listening or wanting to work with me. It's yeah, we can have talk for hours on this, and but yeah, I think it was all failures, it was all struggles, it's hard even to this day, as hard as I told you about my wife.
Yeah.
Is yeah, like not being able to be home as much and just trying to provide for the family, and having a wife who lives in chronic pain every single day, who can't even really get dressed by herself. And so yeah, it's not easy for anybody. It's not easy for anybody, myself included. And just do the best with what you got, and just try to keep learning and helping and serving and loving the best you can.
Yeah, and I love that you said serving too. I think that's some of the best people that I've met in the sport world. Service is always a key part of what they believe and what they do every day.
Absolutely.
We have some guests on this show that are have a variety of different needs, and I'm doing one of these later this week with young girl who was in a really traumatic car accident when she was 16, and she suffers, actually no, I shouldn't say, she actually thrives with permanent brain damage. And
Wow.
her and I have done like CrossFit competition together and stuff like that, and her story is really cool. But
Wow.
because of, we're going to have some people watching, um, by nature of the network, through some of the other guests we're going to have, of people with variety of needs. So can I ask you what your wife's diagnosis is?
So we're they hear that another problem is we're still trying to figure it out. So
Really?
anywhere from, yeah, so it went from Lyme's to to MS to fibromyalgia to it just we just do not know. Been to a number of different
Wow.
surgeons and different not surgeons, doctors around the world, and no one
Yeah.
has been able. There's a little bit of rheumatoid arthritis in there, so it kind of
Yeah.
shows signs of a lot of different things, and haven't been able to figure it out yet. So we're
That's crazy.
fighting this invisible monster right now.
Wow. Well, I
Yeah,
definitely wish you the best with that. That's
appreciate it, brother.
unbelievable. And I think that I can imagine, as you alluded to, the travel's got to be pretty tough with that.
Yeah, yeah, it travels quite, but she's an incredible trooper. We have some friends and loved ones around us to help us
Yeah.
out, and we're carrying along. We're doing it.
Cool. That's awesome. She sounds like an awesome lady. That's for sure.
She is great. She's the best.
Cool.
She's the best.
Um, I'll ask you. So if people want to like follow you or connect with you, social media, email, you have stuff like that.
Yeah, at Justin Sue on Instagram. That's or Twitter. JUSTINSUA. I try to post something every single day to just try to provide some help any way I can, but I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
Yeah, and for people, especially for kids watching this, when we talked about microdosing, I think if you can follow somebody like Justin, if you can just get that little bit of input in your life on a daily or weekly basis, that helps you in small bursts, it makes a big difference. That's for sure. Are you reading anything right now?
I am. I'm reading. I'm about to start the Super Forecasting. It's a book about behavioral economics and be able to predicting behavior. I
Yeah.
have a lot of friends who are in NASA and Navy SEALs and pro sports, trying to predict how something will turn out. Even trying to forecast mental toughness. Does this 17-year-old? How is he going to be at 24 years old? And no one really knows. We can't really figure this out right now. And so, including my friends at NASA and special forces, we're all trying to figure it out. So I'm really into behavioral economics right now, and studying whether it be environmental design or yeah, probabilistic thinking. All of that's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, really cool stuff in
Yeah.
there, and I've read a little bit on that, and one of the things that I find that my brain, you kind of, you change the way that you look at the world on a daily
Yeah.
basis. All of a sudden, you're like,
Yep.
you start to realize, you're like, oh, so I know somebody who could have told me I was gonna do that,
Yep. Exactly. It's so true.
or I
So
was gonna
true.
think this, or I was gonna buy that, like
Yep.
all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. That's it.
Well, that's really awesome, and I like to wrap up with a bit of a challenging question. But the thing I'd like you to do is try and capture your best advice on how to be a better learner in a sentence or two.
How to be the best learners? I would say um, just this mindset that number one, you are always under construction. I think that right there, we are always under construction. Just that mentality will help you realize, just keep that white belt mentality on. You're always under construction. You're never a finished product. We'll just leave it at that. You're always
Cool.
under construction.
Cool. I like that a lot. Well, that was, I think we probably could have kept going for another hour or two, but
Yeah.
in the interest of being able to actually upload this to YouTube within a week without having to leave my
Nice.
laptop uploading it, I'm going to end it right there because I think that's awesome. Always under
Awesome.
construction. And
Awesome.
I really appreciate the time, Justin. It's been an awesome chat. And you'll have to say hi to Trevor for me when you talk to him.
We'll do. We'll do.
Cool.
We'll do.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Ken.